out at Proswing here in Chapin 105 Snapdragon Court. Going to be out here all day long. We'll be out here for another hour. Terry takes over at noon, and then Jay will be out here from 3 until 6. Come by and see us. Been watching Wes and Chris hit some golf balls here. So I feel like what Chris has been chipping it, and Wes, you're kind of catching it off to the side. You guys got to kind of come together to form one cohesive good shot when it comes to the drives, I guess.
Yeah, good luck. We're gonna
need more than just combining.
Need a coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing's fun, man. Like I said earlier, it is addicting. So,
well, I could see how having one of these in your basement would be a cool thing to have. An integrated media could set you up with that if you want to. Got to clear with the wife first, of course.
You better be retired if you're getting that done, because you would just be, I feel like, in your basement, hitting golf balls at all times. But yeah, they apparently, there's some lucky folks in the area that have gone that route. And for one, where's our invite? But two, pretty awesome. And no limit to what they can come up with to do at your home here at Integrated Media.
Absolutely appreciate them having us out here this week, and kind of the start to Masters Week as the practice round's going on and things get rolling coming up later on this week out there at Augusta National. We'll continue to talk about that as the week goes along, but we are also, of course, talking about spring football as we get into the final 2 weeks. Another practice in the books from earlier on this morning. Again, going to hear from Coach Beamer coming up at 12:30 as we do each and every Tuesday during spring practice. And had the first scrimmage this past Saturday. A lot of hype about that going into last week. And obviously was not open to the public or the media, but you guys got some intel on what was going on out there. And it seems like a little bit of an advantage as far as the defense goes, which isn't really surprising given all the new things on offense, but defense seemed to have a good day on Saturday.
Yeah, they did from what I heard, and you continue to hear that the defense is ahead right now, which I don't think is a huge shock. That is typically the case this time of year anyway, especially early on in practice. Now we're starting to get towards and then past the midway point of the spring. I'm sure internally you would like to start to hear the offense is starting to kind of pick it up a little bit as well. And from what I heard, it really was. And again, you're talking about taking bits and pieces of information from here, from there, and kind of trying to stitch it together into a complete picture. It was not, by all indications, I got like a sloppy scrimmage. I think it was a overall solid day, typical first scrimmage. You're going to have some big plays on offense. You're going to have some big plays on defense. And but I do just continue to hear that the speed, the athleticism, the depth, particularly up front on this defense, talking D-line and linebackers, continues to be evident. And I think that's what we thought on paper. That's what we anticipated. But I would say it's maybe been, even more so than we thought.
Well, and this falls into one of those categories. And I think, Shane Beamer will probably go into this today and talking about, hey, the scrimmage, we got some good work in, and give a little bit of detail, whether that's, I don't know if that'll be individual standouts or more just kind of big picture stories. But he talked about this in his last presser, I think it was, on the subject of turnovers, right? If your defense is getting a bunch of turnovers in scrimmages and practice, you're going, man, our defense is doing an outstanding job getting turnovers. But on the flip side of that, our offense is turning the ball over way too much. And so you kind of feel conflicted as a head coach on those things. You kind of you don't want your offense turning it over in practice. At the same time, you want your defense getting a lot of turnovers. So there's that tension there. I think it's kind of similar when you're thinking about just your defense versus your offense. As you said, I agree, Wes, is typical at this time that the defense is maybe ahead. But then you kind of dive into it. All right, one of the things that we heard, I think, South Carolina's defensive line, right? They seem so far, from the bits and pieces we've picked up, they seem to have been they have gotten maybe the better of the offense so far in practice. So then you got to dive into, okay, well, why is that, right? I think from what we know so far, there are some indications that this line is going to be able to take the next step forward because of some of the personnel that they've added and the guys that they're bringing back. And so to some degree, some of this, look, number one, you're not going to solve it. Even I think by the end of the spring, you're going to have some battles in terms of competition, particularly on the offensive line, that continue throughout spring, into summer, into preseason. And so what does this all mean? I still think to be determined. And then let's see if things shift over the next few months. And then honestly, guys, you're not going to even have a great gauge until they actually go line it up against an opponent, starting with game 1 against Old Dominion, but then certainly when you get into conference play as well.
I do wonder as a staff how you evaluate, and this every staff deals with this. How do you evaluate, was that a good play by the defense or a bad play by the offense? Was that a bad play by the defense or a good play by would you rather have busts on defense right now, or would you rather have, well, my guy just got beat? Like those are two different things. If you're having too many busts, it's all right, guys, we got to clean this up. But that doesn't mean you don't have the talent to clean it up, So I imagine as a head coach, that is one of the biggest battles you're facing. How do you sit there and preach turnovers as a defense and protect the ball as an offense, and then decide if you're happy at the end of the day?
Well, that's the imperfectness of a scrimmage, is you're never going to walk away completely satisfied, which I guess in spring's kind of a benefit because it always continues to give you things to work on. And obviously we have the ultimate scrimmage coming up here in a little less than 2 weeks time with the spring game, where we, as a, public, will get to see all those units in person for the first time. And I imagine at that point, the defense probably still going to be likely ahead of the offense because there's so many new things and new moving pieces going on the defensive side of the ball. One other thing that you guys wrote about in reference to this scrimmage was, the positives is as far as linebacker and a lot more speed coming to that position, which is something that we were hoping was going to be the case when you look at some of the guys they brought in from the transfer portal, as well as coming in as true freshmen. Namely, somebody like Demetrius Knight coming in from Charlotte. You have Wendell Gregory and Fred Johnson coming in as true freshmen. A bunch of guys we've heard a lot of hype about, and it seems to be things are going pretty well for them, at least through this scrimmage on this past Saturday.
That's Fred J.R. Johnson.
Fred J.R. Johnson. I got to get that right. I'm looking at it on the roster. It still says Fred, so I go with
no.
Fred.
You got that old roster.
Got old roster.
Right, I got to look at it.
JR is the official name we're going with.
Updated on the scholarship breakdown, and I'll say it correctly next time.
Oh! Shots fired! You hear that, Brian Shoemaker?
Hey, I click on this thing like 10 times a day, so I'm giving you guys.
We appreciate those cents from Google AdSense, but no, I think those guys. I mean, strangely enough, after losing Stone Blanton and Pup Howard, South Carolina actually went out and added, I would say, athleticism and speed at that position. Then bringing in the two true freshmen and getting them in early, they have fit right in from everything we've heard. And they're a little bit different in terms of the two skill sets there, I think, with Gregory and with J.R. Johnson. But I think both guys are going to help this team. And I think, we've already heard enough for me to believe that J.R. Johnson, who was not like the most highly recruited guy by any means, he did move up in the rankings themselves. This is a guy I think we're going to be talking about come fall. Now, there's enough depth ahead of him with the transfers and the guys returning. He's probably not going to be forced into a ton of reps right off the bat, but I think you look at special teams, and then I think you look at sort of however much of that 3-3-5 and kind of building out the depth at that position. I think this is a kid you're probably going to see on the field, and you want to start talking spring game. To me, spring game is all about young guys. You don't want to play your older guys enough reps for them to really make an impact, because you don't want guys getting hurt. The more you can just get your freshmen, get your newcomers out there and let them go play, I feel like the better in a spring game setting.
Yeah, I agree. Debo Williams, not 50 snaps, during the spring game. That's JR time. That's Wendell Gregory. And, not only Demetrius Knight, when you look at the transfers, but Bengali Kamara, right? I mean, this is a guy that played a good bit of football at Pitt alongside, DeAndre Jules, who's playing defensive tackle and will play, I think, a pretty significant role for South Carolina. You really do see and get the sense that if they can stay healthy, which is an if, you just feel a lot better about the depth, the athleticism on the front seven. And I think, young guy, right? But Wes and I independently have both continued to hear buzz about Dylan Stewart as well, the 5-star freshman. He's a guy that, especially, right after the scrimmage on Saturday, I don't know the specifics of maybe what he did, but he just got a few messages of, hey, this is a guy that's been impressive, whether it's in the scrimmage or just in practice.
And when you guys have been able to go out there and observe practice, that seems to be kind of the report that comes back every single time is Dylan Stewart is looking very impressive. And again, you guys only see him for a limited scope, so you're not seeing him, in these scrimmages necessarily just yet. But what stands out the most to you when you do see him in these reps in practice that is showing you that he is kind of living up to that 5-star billing so far?
Yeah, just for one, the length. He looks the way you want an SEC defensive end, edge rusher to look. And that means height. That means long arms, quick first step, and just. I've always thought a 5-star guy, it should be pretty apparent. Like it should be obvious right off the bat, and I think that's the case with Dylan. And then you listen to what the coaches say about him too: Clayton White, Sterling Lucas. The kid's still learning, obviously, but the fact that he has come in and kind of attacked, deficiencies. And I say that because any freshman is going to have to develop. Any freshman is going to have to come along when they first get there. But he's not sort of resting on the fact that he was a 5-star guy. He's come in, he's worked, he's been willing to get after it. And I think it's a competitor as well. So you're already, I think, when you look at him and you look at Josiah Thompson, the 2 5-star guys, you've already checked off a lot of boxes with those 2 guys and feeling like they're going to be contributors at South Carolina.
And again, Coach Beamer coming up today at 12:30 will give his latest on what's going on with spring practice. They put another practice in the books this morning and getting closer and closer to the spring game coming up again next Saturday. We'll jump back in to the basketball conversation. Markeisha Grant, former Gamecock and somebody that's been helping you guys out at Gamecock Central through this NCAA tournament run for the women, going to join us on the other side to discuss the national championship from Sunday. Again, we're broadcasting live out at Proswing here in Chapin 105 Snapdragon Court. We're going to be out here for another hour. Then Terry takes over at 12. Jay's going to be out here from 3 until 6. Come by and see us. You can take a swing on one of the simulators here if you haven't done that before. Really cool setup they got going on out here. Our guys at Integrated Media right next door set the whole thing up, and we'd love to show you it if you do have the opportunity to come out here. Again, broadcasting until noon, and the station going to be out here all day long. Come back, talk to Markeisha Grant about women's basketball next here on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on the Game.
I know that's like a legit bargain.
All right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you here on The Game, broadcasting live at a Proswing in Chapin 105 Snapdragon Court. Going to be out here all day long, and we are still talking plenty about what happened on Sunday with the women's team claiming another national championship, taking down Iowa 87-75. We now welcome in on the Love Chevrolet phone lines Markeisha Grant, a former Gamecock herself. Markeisha, first of all, thanks so much for joining us, and we appreciate what you've been doing with Gamecock Central over the course of this tournament. Where did you take this game in at, and what were your emotions when that clock hit 0 on Sunday?
Thank you for having me. As you can see, my voice is still gone from winning on Sunday. I was screaming, literally was standing up the whole game. I don't recall sitting down one time. I just feel like I'm overcome with emotions because last year, they lost to Iowa, and it kind of prevented them from the perfect season. And then here we fast forward to playing Iowa in the championship and complete the mission. And it just starts with the players and how they prepared for the season and how they just were for each other and the chemistry that they had on and off the floor. It just speaks to, the type of kids and the type of players that Coach Staley recruits to come to South Carolina. And they had one mission in mind, and that was to go and win a national championship. I don't know if it was to go undefeated, but it definitely was to win. So I'm so happy for them.
Hey, Markeisha, it's Wes. Good to hear from you. Hope you're doing well. And as you kind of look over or look back at this game, I think you can look at the box score and just say everybody who hit the floor for South Carolina contributed in some positive and major way. And, I think there's multiple cases to be made for multiple MVPs for South Carolina in this game. But what Raven Johnson did in terms of guarding Caitlin Clark, making her work for everything she got, and just being kind of an X factor defensively. As a former guard yourself, what stood out to you about the job Raven did and sort of the game plan South Carolina had against Caitlin?
Wow. So Raven is really a student of this game. And so I think she did a lot of watching film on the tendencies of Caitlin. I don't know if you realize, she got her hands on Caitlin's balls 4 or 5 times, and she stole it twice. So she was really strategic in that. So I think she did a really good job of understanding what she likes to do. And for me, that's something that I used to do in terms of when I play defense is tip the ball or steal the ball. So I was just so happy for Raven to get the revenge that she talked about all season. And I think it started off with her just running the team and leading the team. And she knew she had a big task at hand, but she was prepared for the moment. She locked in and she did what all the coaches needed her to do. So she definitely was the real MVP of the game. But I have to give it to Tessa and Malaysia Fulwali coming in the game, freshman, never been in this position, never experienced anything at this level. And they were poised, they were locked in, and they did everything that needed to be done to give South Carolina that boost off the bench.
Markeisha, Chris here. You mentioned your emotions in watching this game and the aftermath of it. And something that stood out to me that Dawn Staley was asked about in her post-game press conference was just her emotions right after the game. You could see it really starting as the players began to celebrate, as the seconds ticked down. When Holly Rowe came over to talk to her, she could barely speak. She was so emotional. What did you make of that, just as far as why this one seemed to be so meaningful for Dawn Staley?
I think last year, you had a really great group of players. And so, they worked so hard, and then they got to that moment where they couldn't get over the hump of winning that game against Iowa, but also going perfect. So I think for her, it was I'm going to I'm gonna go in my shell. I'm gonna go and do what I need to do to make this team better. So maybe we can be in this position again. I don't think she had in mind like we're gonna go undefeated, but she was like, I'm gonna go and get what this team is needing, and she went and got Tahina Paopao. She had signed Tessa Johnson, Malaysia Fulwali, who can shoot. They can shoot the ball really well. So I think she was thinking in terms of like, I want to put my team in a position to win a national championship. And I think she just prepared for that all year. Now, did we know that it was going to be Iowa that we would be playing in the national championship? Absolutely not. But I think she prepared for that moment all season. So, and I think it was just a weight that was lifted off of her in terms of like, not doing it last year and just being able to do it this year with a totally different team. And it just speaks to her hard work and her team, her staff's hard work, how they prepared the players for the moment.
I don't know if you could have written a better script if you were writing a movie or a book for it to end up being Iowa again and for it to be in the national title this time. And
right,
Raven gets her revenge. I mean, it was perfect all the way around. You mentioned obviously Tessa Johnson, Malaysia Fulwali, really this entire bench all season long. I think it's got to be demoralizing for an opponent to see Fulwali, Tessa, Ashlyn Watkins, Fagan as well coming off the bench, and there's just another wave of fresh talent coming at you. What did you think? I mean, just the fact I thought, Markeisha, that this game played out exactly the way a lot of South Carolina's games have all season long, and that everybody contributed, everybody played a role. But I want to go back a little bit to Tessa Johnson. Like I feel like we all kind of put some high expectations on Fulwali right off the bat for obvious reasons, but Tessa in the tournament and really going into the SEC tournament as well, Tessa Johnson has just been so clutch. I mean, she's definitely got that clutch gene you hear people talk about. She seemed, I would say, not only unfazed, but also just took her game to a completely different level, it felt like. And what do you think that did? Not just in terms of production, but also just for her teammates. Like she's always got that smile on her face. Seems to be a great personality. I'm not sure we're sitting here having this conversation, maybe even if not for what Tessa was able to do in the postseason.
I want to speak a little bit about Tessa because it's very like special. So if you guys aren't familiar, like Coach Staley wore the number 5, right? So if you think about all the people who wore the number 5, it was myself, Khadijah Sessions, Victoria Saxton, and now Tessa Johnson. And we all have the same thing in common in terms of like how we approach basketball, right? We're poised, we have pace, we have tenacity, we have all the things. So I think she was already built for that moment, and I think Coach Staley seen that when she was recruiting her, and the times that she's played in championships in high school, and so it was kind of like Coach Staley was grooming her from the beginning of the season and putting her in situations. And I feel like she knew that she would come up in big moments. Tessa has a swag about herself that people don't understand, but I think she just knows like her team trusts her coaches trust her, and she's been in those moments in terms of like in high school championship games. And so like it was just another test that she passed. Like she just went out there and played her best basketball. And when your teammates trust you, you're gonna do anything to help them win. So I just think that speaks to why Tessa performed so well in the national championship game and in the tournament.
Markeisha, appreciate your time for us this morning and really appreciate what you did with Gamecock Central over the course of these last couple of weeks. Really, enjoyed your insight in those articles that you were able to write for them. And hopefully we can have this same kind of conversation a year from now with maybe another national championship for Dawn Staley's team.
Absolutely. I know she's going to get them back after, everything calms down and we're going to have goals for next season as well. So I'm looking forward to it as well.
Absolutely. We'll definitely have to have you on a little bit down the line. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
Again, that's Markeisha Grant, former Gamecock, recapping what was a historic season for South Carolina, wrapping it up with another national championship on Sunday. Real quick, want to remind you once again, coming up tonight, you have South Carolina baseball taking on North Carolina. Pregame coverage starting at 6:45. First pitch coming up at 7 o'clock. You'll be able to listen to that right here on the game. In fact, let's talk a little bit of baseball on the other side, as it's been an up and down start to conference play for the Gamecocks. We'll dive into that. Let's hear a little bit of what Coach Kingston had to say yesterday afternoon with Jay and Elijah as well, as you are listening to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, live out at Proswing here in Chapin 105. Snapdragon Court going to be out here all day long. Come by and see us here on the game. Well, welcome back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, Chris. We're out here at Proswing in Chapin 105 Snapdragon Court going until noon. Then Terry takes over. Whole station's going to be out here all the way until 6 o'clock today. So come by and see us, hang out for a little bit, take a swing on one of the simulators if you've never done it before, and check those out. Having a good time out here again at Proswing 105 Snapdragon Court out here in Chapin. Baseball back in action coming up tonight. Another opportunity for you to win the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway, as the pot is over $800 now, still waiting for that elusive Grand Slam from a Gamecocks hitter. Maybe it'll come tonight as they take on a number 13 ranked North Carolina Tar Heels team. So no break in the midweek for South Carolina this week. And last week was not a good midweek game for them as they fell to Georgia Southern 8-0 and then dropped 2 of 3 against Texas A&M this past weekend. That put South Carolina at 6-6 in conference play through the first 4 series of the season so far. Coach Kingston yesterday afternoon was on with Jay and Elijah, talked about finding some positives in the 6-6 start in SEC play so far.
Well, again, it's a long season, so there's going to be ups and downs. I think in our league this year, it's going to be wild. It's going to be a wild year in our league. You look at the defending national champions. I think they're 2-9 or 3-9 right now in the conference. So it's going to be a lot of challenges. We've played what I think is probably the best team in the country this weekend, and had a chance to win 2 out of 3. We didn't. We won yesterday. We found a way to win. We made some adjustments, and it's just going to continue to be a work in progress. The RPI is still in a great spot, and we just need to keep getting better. There are areas in all facets of our game that I think we can continue to get better.
Slight almost interruption by Jay Phillips there, but of course, Coach Kingston going to find the positives in it. And despite sitting at 6-6, South Carolina is technically only 4th in the SEC standings as of right now. So not as bad as it certainly could be, but definitely want to get things back on the right track. Or at 2nd or 4th in the East standings.
Fourth in the SEC East.
Yeah, I'm looking at the split standings here, not the overall standings. So still an opportunity to rebound as you've still got plenty more conference series coming up. Next one going on the road this weekend against Florida. Again, tough midweek game tonight, taking on North Carolina, but this past weekend against a very good A&M team, you saw the starting pitching struggle a little bit with Eli Jones and Tyler Pitzer on Friday and Saturday. Becker came in and had a really good start on Sunday where South Carolina was able to pick up the win. But as we've talked about so many times, you can't keep dropping the first 2 games of these series. And as great as it is to not get swept and winning game number 3, winning the series is the most important thing at the end of the day. And unfortunately, South Carolina has not been able to do that very consistently so far.
Yeah, and I certainly understand the frustration for the fan base at this point. But what's that phrase? It's getting late early, and I feel like I don't really know what that means. But in this case, it's been early in the season for a long time, and then before you know it, you blink and you're like, actually, we're getting into the midway point soon of SEC play, and so. RPI starts to become a factor. Your actual record starts to become a real factor, and who you are as a team starts to kind of show itself. So for South Carolina, I don't think they're that far off, but unfortunately in the SEC, when you can be a little bit off, and that's going to be the difference in winning and losing a lot of games, because the teams you play are just so talented, and it's every week, right? Like you look at the schedule, at this point, I think we've reached that kind of point in the year, or the point in this process where the fans are doing the thing where they say, they start to get mad at what Kingston says in press conferences. And it's kind of like, what do you want him to say?
He's not yelling enough in the dugout.
Like, what do you want him to say at this point? And so for them, it's just about finding more wins, honestly, frankly. And that's going to be tough to do. They've still got some questions to answer. And, you are at 500. So it's not like the thing is just completely blown up in your face. But if you're going to fix it, then the time period you have in order to fix it has started to dwindle. Like the time is starting to run out. This thing can still be salvaged, but it needs to be early. And then even in your midweeks, I mean, you're going to Charlotte to play North Carolina. Like, that's not an easy matchup by any means.
Yeah, and instead of, you could be, 4-8, You could be 2-10. That's a big difference, between that and 6-6. Now, at some point, like you said, Wes, you do have to make up some games, but you haven't dug a hole that you can't dig out of. And that's why, the Vanderbilt series, to sweep that was huge. Otherwise, you could very easily see this thing having already gone in the opposite direction. We're like, man, given who you play and how you played so far, it's going to be too difficult to make it up. You're still in a position where you can. Now, you can look at it realistically. You're not in a terrible spot. You're not in a good spot by any means, because you look at your series losses. You've lost a series to Clemson. You won't even have a chance to make up a game there now because they just announced that game will not be made up. Then you've lost series to Ole Miss, Alabama, and obviously to Texas A&M, and then you swept Vanderbilt. Now, also, aside from the sweep, the Sunday wins in those series actually benefit you because they've kept you, even though you lost the series, from digging that huge hole. I think what some people are doing, and I understand why, is viewing this season through the lens of what's happened in the past Kingston tenure and going, okay, hasn't made it back to Omaha. Here's where things are trending this season, and you might not feel good about it. And if you feel that way, that is fine. But you do have to look at every season individually. And the fact is that the team is not buried yet. Now, if a few more series go by and they can't pick up any wins, that might bury their chances to ultimately make a run. Point is, not quite there yet. Heck, I'm not saying it's the same, not saying it'll happen. Ole Miss went 12-16 in conference play a couple years ago. Went one and done in the SEC tournament. They got hot. They won the national title. Am I saying that's going to happen? No. Point is, you can't write it off at 6-6 just yet.
You can't, but when you look at these next couple series, the magnitude of the teams you're going up against, taking on Florida, taking on the two best teams in the SEC in Arkansas and Kentucky in back-to-back series, like this is the make or break point of your schedule. Like you have to find a way to win over half of those games over these next couple weeks to put yourself in good position for the last couple of weeks of the series as you head into the postseason. You obviously can't win the SEC in the middle of April, but you can certainly lose the SEC in the middle of April if you let things get away from you. And again, no break tonight, taking on a top 15 ranked North Carolina team up there in Charlotte.
Guys, this schedule is brutal. I don't even know, like internally, I don't think you think this way, but externally, as we're looking at it from a big picture standpoint, I think you just got to split against your next three. You said what? Kentucky, Arkansas, and Florida in reverse order to that.
Yep.
Can you just? It's 9 games, but can you go 4-5 or 5-4? Mm-hmm. Honestly, and then now you go to Missouri, so you're on the road. We've actually seen in this league, road series victories are very hard to come by. But Missouri is one of those teams that their season is kind of already tanked at this point. So it does let up at some point a little bit. Georgia has some big wins this year, but they're sitting there 5-7 right now.
But they are a powerful offense.
They are
struggled against powerful offenses this year.
But everybody right now, except for maybe Missouri and Missouri, Ole Miss, Auburn. Somehow LSU sitting at 3-9, which is just weird to even see or say. But for the most part, the teams on this schedule for South Carolina are all top 15 teams. So I think that will be rewarded at the end of the year in the RPI, and it will be rewarded by the committee. But you just can't let a 4-5 or 5-4 over these next 9, become 2 or 3 wins, I think, because then you're going to be fighting out of it. If you can go 500 in SEC play, then you're going to make the tournament and you're going to have a chance to make a run.
Yeah, and you want to get some series wins too. What the ones I just listed, 3 of them were in conference, right? You lost to those series. You picked up a very impressive sweep against Vandy, and that really illustrates your point, Wes. Hard to come by series wins when you are on the road, and Vanderbilt, who's still a very good baseball team, they found that out as well. So, that's the part of this where you look at it and you're saying, okay, 6-6, 500 in SEC play is not a bad result, but in order to get there, you're going to have to do what you've done so far or better against incredible competition. As good as South Carolina's competition has been, you don't really see a lull at all, with the exception of Missouri, which is still going to be tough. You don't see a lull in the schedule. So that makes it really, really hard. This team's obviously got a lot of pieces. I think the question is, can they realize that potential more fully that you kind of know is there? And you've seen it. It's not just this concept or an idea. Like you've seen when this team is clicking, they can beat really, really good teams, but they've also been too often on the other side of that where they don't put together a complete performance.
Yeah, and we're talking about Florida being right up there with some of these other teams, and Florida was, I think they were close to being top 5 at one point, but they've dropped all the way back to almost out of the top 25. Their fans are probably having similar discussions, at least about this season, to what South Carolina fans are having. They're 6-6 in SEC play and 17-14 overall.
Right.
So at least on paper, again, every team you face is talented. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but at least on paper, that's the one that you want to try to steal a series there and win it. Because you look at, for my money, Texas A&M, seeing what they brought this weekend, that may be the best team in the country. But Arkansas is the number 1 team right now.
Right. Next test coming up tonight, taking on North Carolina. Dylan Eskew going to get the start for the Gamecocks up there in Charlotte. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the show out here at Proswing out in Chapin, going until noon here on the Game. Welcome back in. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyrod West Mitchell, Chris Clark, again out here at Proswing in Chapin. Going to be out here for a couple more minutes ourselves, and the game's going to be out here all day long. Terry Ford, I got Michael said we need to hit the breaking news sounder because Terry Ford actually showed up 15 minutes before the show started. I know that's amazing, right? Hey, he told me to say it. He told me to say it.
Here. Of course I'm early.
Well, yes, they do have, in fact, over 25 craft beers as well as domestic soft drinks and energy drinks as well. So it's not just hitting golf balls. You can come out here and have a good time out at Proswing here in Chapin. Again, we're going to be out here for a few more minutes. As watching Josh and Terry duel on the driving range. Josh has finally started getting under it a little bit and driving these balls a lot farther. Terry's still kind of going with the putt-putt approach, it seems like. He broke 100, so we're getting there. We're getting there. But see, that's the beauty of something like this. You come out here and perfect your game before you actually take it to a real golf course and embarrass yourself.
I love watching these lefty swings from Terry and lefties just have a weird.
See,
yeah,
so,
it kind of hurts.
You know, it's funny
to watch.
I never realized that Preston was a lefty until we got in here this morning watching him take some swings.
I didn't know that, but it kind of makes sense. Like I feel like Preston's a very analytical guy.
Gives it that lefty vibe,
but Terry doesn't. So that doesn't.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Well, most people don't play golf in jeans and a hoodie, so.
True. But you can come out here.
But you can't. You can wear whatever you want to come out here. There's no dress code. Now, Josh looks like he's ready for the live tour with his shorts and backwards cap.
Josh is starting to hit some shots after West.
I gave him a few tips.
Well, see, the goal is to get it over Mount Everest in the background. Like that's the ultimate goal. We're about halfway there.
All right, come out and see us for real. We'll be here all day. I don't know if you get it. We're trying to give them a description.
We're doing you got to come see it in person.
Yeah.
The doors are literally open. You can walk in and come and see it yourself. Had some people stop by. Somebody came by and dropped off a book for Wes. So yeah, great time out here. And I'm gonna be out here all day. Terry's gonna take over with halftime show in a couple minutes. Jay will be out here from 3 until 6 with post game show coming up at 12:30. Again, as every week or every Tuesday during spring practice, we have Coach Beamer giving his latest assessment of what's going on with spring ball. And again, we haven't seen anything from media standpoint in the past week. What, if anything, you're interested to hear from him today as we're closing in on the end of spring practice?
I think he'll talk a bit about the scrimmage. Now, you know, you're going to hear, you know, what he wants you to hear, I guess, frankly, but hopefully we'll get some more details on some guys that stood out in the scrimmage. I'd love to hear that. I think, you know, you see some stuff out there maybe about the scrimmage, some rumors and stuff like that. I think he'll probably address, you know, his thoughts on the scrimmage and how they played and how they executed in that. And also, I think he'll be asked about the wide receivers. I'll say this. I heard Mazio Bennett continuing to come along. Gage Larvadain, I think, is maybe the receiver. I think those are the two guys I've actually heard about the most throughout the spring. And just in terms of being consistent, making some plays, and being in a situation where we know receiver is going to be a discussion piece all offseason, right? And so those guys have come along, I think. And, you know, I'll be curious to see what he says about the quarterbacks. How much does he dive in? How much detail does he give about those guys doing what was asked of them at that position?
Well, and the scrimmage was the first opportunity to see these guys in, you know, a true game type of setting where, again, you got referees out there and you don't have coaches kind of hovering over everything. And that could be a time where Robbie Ashford maybe set himself apart a little bit, given the fact that he has more experience than the Lenore Sellers in those settings. But definitely going to be interested to hear what Beamer says about that, again, coming up in a little over half an hour's time.
Yeah, any little, you know, scrimmage notes or nuggets, you know, will there be any type of surprise that he says? You know, I'm not projecting that, but if he does, that's something you can always latch on to. I do think it's interesting, you know, just like I said earlier with Dylan Stewart, you know, Wes and I both kind of independently heard some really good things on Dylan Stewart, the former 5-star freshman edge. I've also heard some good things about Mazio Bennett. You know, Gage Larvadain has been the guy as a transfer from Miami of Ohio, who, when you look at the receiver position, obviously still some questions there, but he's been the one that you kind of heard the most buzz about in terms of being most consistent, making the most plays. Mazio Bennett seems to be coming along, and I think it's a positive, y'all, that you hear a little bit more after the scrimmage as well. And the things that have been told to me are, he may not be like the flashiest receiver in terms of just absolutely incredible speed or, just physical specimen, right? He's not maybe those things, but what he is just a really smart route runner and a really good football player. And certainly he was at Greenville with all the things they asked him to do in high school. And so curious to hear what Beamer says, if anything, about that position and really Bennett specifically.
Yeah, and going back to the quarterbacks real quick, it was these scrimmage settings last year when Lenoris Sellers really started to make sort of a little bit of buzz for himself. You started to hear, hey, this guy did this at the scrimmage. This guy did that. And I think I'll be curious to see what Beamer has to say, but these are settings where Lenoris tends to thrive a little bit. He's got that kind of gamer. Beamer talked about that when the lights come on. Guys are a little bit different. Lenoris is one of those guys.
You'll hear from Beamer coming up at 12:30. Appreciate everybody at Proswing allowing us to be out here. You can check them out on Facebook at Proswing Columbia. Give them a call, 803-528-1617. More information or visit them on the website, proswingcolumbia.com. Coming up next, halftime show with Terry Ford. This has been the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the Game.